Hi everyone, welcome to the channel After All That Years.
Looking back now, I realize I should have trusted my gut when Claire started picking fights over every little thing. But you don't expect your wife of 7 years to be planning an escape route while she's screaming at you about her friends' parties. It started with Veronica's upcoming celebration. Veronica, you know the type, always stirring up trouble wherever she went. Her gatherings were notorious around town for the wrong reasons. Marriages fell apart at her parties, business partnerships dissolved, reputations got destroyed. I'd seen it happen to other couples we knew. When Claire announced she was going, I tried reasoning with her first. Kept my voice level. Explained my concerns without making demands. "Look, this isn't me trying to control you," I said, while she scrolled through her phone, not even looking up. "I'm just worried about what always happens at Veronica's place." She waved me off like I was some annoying fly. "You're being dramatic. Veronica's my friend, and I'm not missing this because you're feeling insecure." That word, insecure, hit exactly where she meant it to. But it wasn't insecurity talking. It was 7 years of marriage and a growing sense that something fundamental had shifted in our relationship. Claire had become distant over the past few months, always glued to that phone, smiling at messages she never shared. Little things that individually meant nothing, but together painted a picture I didn't want to see. As the party date approached, our house felt like a pressure cooker. I made one last attempt the night before. "Please, Claire, let's just have a quiet evening together. I'll cook that pasta dish you love. We can finally watch that movie you've been mentioning." Her laugh was sharp and dismissive. "That's your idea of excitement? Sitting on our old couch watching Netflix? No thanks. I need something that actually feels like living." The next evening, she transformed herself for this party like she was attending some Hollywood premiere. The black dress was new. I'd never seen it before, and it clung to her in ways that made my stomach knot. Her makeup was flawless, her perfume so strong it filled the room. She looked incredible, which somehow made everything worse. "Do you really have to go?" I asked one final time, my voice barely above a whisper. Her expression went cold. "I'm going. Stop making this bigger than it needs to be." Before I could respond, she grabbed her purse and walked out. The sound of her heels clicking down the hallway echoed in my head long after the front door slammed. The hours crawled by like torture. I tried everything, television, a book, even cleaning the kitchen, but my mind kept circling back to her. Where was she? Who was she with? Was I losing my mind, or was this unease in my gut telling me something real? By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. Sent her a simple text. "You okay?" Nothing. An hour passed, then 2. Still silence. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up waiting. If she wanted to pretend I didn't exist, fine. I wasn't going to sit there like some pathetic husband checking his phone every 5 minutes. The next morning, I was on my second cup of coffee when I heard the knock at the door. Wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment my heart stopped. When I opened it, there she was. Claire stood on our doorstep in that same black dress, now wrinkled and stained. Her makeup was smeared, hair tangled, looking like she'd been through a hurricane. But what shocked me wasn't her appearance. It was the expression on her face. Smug. Almost triumphant. Like she'd just won some twisted game I didn't even know we were playing. "Morning," she said casually, as if she hadn't spent the entire night God knows where. She walked past me without waiting for an invitation and dropped her purse on the table. "We need to talk." Something about the way she said it sent ice through my veins. In that moment, I knew whatever was coming would change everything. Claire's casual attitude as she strolled through our front door like nothing had happened ignited something in me I'd been holding back for months. The nerve of it, after an entire night of radio silence, she had the audacity to act like I owed her my attention. "We need to talk," I repeated, crossing my arms. "That's rich, Claire. I've been waiting all night to hear from you, and now suddenly you want conversation?" She rolled her eyes, brushing past me toward the kitchen. "Don't start, okay? I had a long night and I'm not in the mood for one of your lectures." I followed her, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "A long night? What does that even mean? Where were you, Claire? And don't give me some half-hearted excuse." She took her time pouring water, completely unbothered by my obvious frustration. Finally, she turned around with this little smirk that made my blood pressure spike. "Fine. You want the truth? I stayed at Veronica's. We drank, we danced, and yes, I had more fun than I've had in months. That's why I didn't answer your texts. Happy now? Her nonchalant tone only fueled my anger. That's it? Just like that? You expect me to believe nothing else happened? People don't come home at 9 in the morning looking like they've been through a war zone after a few drinks with friends. She laughed, this cold, humorless sound that echoed through our kitchen. Wow, you really are paranoid, aren't you? Always assuming the worst about me. Maybe you should look in the mirror and figure out why you're so suspicious. Paranoid, I snapped, my voice rising. Don't turn this around on me. You went to that party knowing exactly how I felt about it. You didn't care. You couldn't even be bothered to let me know you were safe. And now you're standing here acting like I'm the problem. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment that smug mask slipped. You know what? Maybe you are the problem. You're boring, predictable, and always so quick to judge. You wouldn't understand what it's like to actually enjoy yourself. Her words cut deep, hitting exactly where she knew they would hurt. So that's what this is about? You think I'm boring? That I don't measure up to whatever fantasy you've built in your head? Instead of answering, she started walking toward the stairs. I'm taking a shower. We'll talk later when you've calmed down. But I wasn't ready to let it go. No, Claire. We're talking now. You don't get to walk in here, throw out insults, and act like everything's fine. She stopped halfway up the stairs, her hand gripping the railing. Slowly, she turned to face me, and the look in her eyes made my blood run cold. It wasn't anger or regret. It was defiance. Fine, she said, her voice low and sharp. You want to know the truth? Last night was the first time in years I felt like myself. I danced, I laughed, I let loose. And maybe I didn't want to come home to a husband who's always breathing down my neck. I stared at her, my mind racing to process what she was really saying. So what are you telling me, Claire? That I'm the reason you stayed out all night? That I'm the one making you miserable? She tilted her head, her lips curving into a cruel smile. If the shoe fits. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, rooted to the spot, as she turned and continued up the stairs, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of her indifference. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands shaking as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Claire wasn't the woman I'd married anymore. And if last night was any indication, I wasn't sure she wanted to be my wife at all. As the sound of the shower echoed through the house, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. I needed answers, and I needed them now. But deep down, I knew whatever truth Claire was hiding was going to destroy everything we'd built together. I sat at that kitchen table, staring at the half-empty water glass Claire had left behind. The silence in our house felt suffocating, broken only by the faint sound of running water upstairs. My mind kept replaying every word she'd said, every smirk, every calculated glance. Something about her behavior wasn't just dismissive. It was strategic. She wanted me to feel small, insignificant, like my concerns were meaningless. When she finally came downstairs, she was dressed casually, her hair still damp from the shower. She looked refreshed, almost glowing, like the events of last night had somehow renewed her. It was such a stark contrast to the disheveled woman who'd knocked on our door just hours earlier. I couldn't help but wonder what, or who, was responsible for that glow. Claire walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened, humming softly while she poured coffee. She didn't even glance in my direction. The sheer audacity of her casual attitude made my jaw clench. Are we just going to pretend last night didn't happen? I finally asked, breaking the tense silence. She sipped her coffee and shrugged. What's there to discuss? I already told you I stayed at Veronica's. End of story. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. Don't lie to me, Claire. You didn't just stay at Veronica's. You came home looking like you'd been through hell, and now you're acting so smug, so indifferent. Something doesn't add up. She set her coffee cup down with a loud clink and crossed her arms. What do you want me to say? That I had the time of my life while you sat here sulking? Because I did. And honestly, maybe I needed a break from all of this. She gestured around the kitchen like our home, our life together, was nothing more than a prison. I felt anger rise in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. You're deflecting, Claire. You're avoiding the real issue. What happened last night? Who were you with? Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something behind her facade. Guilt? Fear? Whatever it was, she buried it quickly. You're being ridiculous, she said sharply. I was with Veronica and her friends. If you're too insecure to handle that, maybe that's your problem, not mine. There it was again. That word. Insecure. She used it like a weapon, cutting deep every time. But this time, I didn't let it silence me. You can keep calling me insecure, Claire, but it doesn't change the fact that you're hiding something. You're not the same person I married, and last night wasn't just about a party. It was about something bigger. Her lips tightened into a thin line and she looked away, refusing to meet my eyes. I'm not doing this, she muttered, grabbing her coffee and heading for the living room. I have better things to do than argue with you all day. I followed her, my frustration boiling over. Better things to do? Like what? Pretend this marriage isn't falling apart? Pretend you didn't just spend the night doing God knows what while I sat here worried about you? She spun around, her eyes blazing. You're unbelievable, you know that? You act like I owe you an explanation for every second of my life. Maybe if you weren't so controlling, I wouldn't feel the need to get away in the first place. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Controlling? I echoed, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Is that what you tell yourself to justify this? That I'm the bad guy? That I'm the reason you're acting like this? She didn't respond. Instead, she turned her back on me and sank into the couch, pulling out her phone and scrolling through it as if I wasn't even there. The dismissal was infuriating, but more than that, it was heartbreaking. This wasn't just a fight, it was a glimpse into the chasm that had grown between us. A chasm I wasn't sure we could bridge. As I stood there watching her, I made a decision. I couldn't keep letting her control the narrative. Couldn't keep letting her brush off my concerns like they didn't matter. If she wasn't going to give me answers willingly, I'd have to find them myself. Later that afternoon, while Claire was out running errands, I did something I never thought I'd do. I decided to look at her phone. I hated the idea of snooping, but I was desperate for answers. Her phone was always password protected, but she wasn't as careful as she thought. I'd watched her enter the code enough times to memorize it. With my heart pounding, I unlocked her phone and started scrolling through her messages. At first, everything seemed normal. Chats with Veronica, some work emails, a few group texts. But then I found it. A message thread with someone named Kevin. No last name, just Kevin. The messages were brief, cryptic, but they made my blood run cold. Kevin. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. Claire. Me too. We need to be more careful, though. He's starting to get suspicious. My hands trembled as I read the exchange over and over, the words burning into my brain. This wasn't just some harmless party. This wasn't just me being paranoid. Claire was hiding something. Something that could destroy everything we'd built together. I locked her phone and put it back where I found it, my mind racing with questions. Who was Kevin? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus. My mind was a storm of anger, confusion, and betrayal. Every glance at Claire, every word she spoke, now felt like a lie. I had so many questions, but one thing I knew for certain. My instincts had been right all along. Something was deeply wrong. Claire acted completely normal the rest of the day, as if nothing had happened. She chatted about mundane things, scrolled through her phone, even asked if I wanted to order takeout for dinner. It was almost laughable how casual she was, as if her betrayal wasn't written all over her face. But I stayed quiet. I needed to play my cards carefully. She had no idea I'd seen those messages from Kevin, and for now, I planned to keep it that way. That night, as Claire slept soundly beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed those messages over and over. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. The words felt like knives in my chest. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait for her to volunteer them. The next morning, Claire left early, claiming she had errands to run. The moment she was gone, I sprang into action. I didn't know much about Kevin, but I was determined to find out more. I started with her phone again, carefully scrolling through her contacts, emails, and social media accounts. Nothing. Whoever this Kevin was, he wasn't someone she had saved under his real name, at least not in her main accounts. Then I remembered something. Claire had recently started using a different messaging app, one she claimed was for a workgroup chat. I opened the app, scrolling through her conversations until I found it. Kevin's name, right there, along with a series of messages that made my blood run cold. Kevin, you're amazing. I've never felt this way before. Claire, you make me feel alive. I just wish things were simpler. Kevin, they could be. You know what you need to do. Claire, I know, I'm just not ready yet. He's not going to take it well. I felt the air leave my lungs. Not only had she been lying to me, but she was clearly planning something. Something that involved Kevin. My hands shook as I scrolled further back, reading through weeks of messages. There were photos too. One of Claire at the party, her arm wrapped around Kevin's shoulders as they smiled for the camera. Another of them in what looked like a dimly lit bar, his hand resting on her thigh. I slammed the phone down, my vision blurring with rage. How could she do this to me? After everything we'd been through, after all the years I'd spent trying to make her happy, this was how she repaid me? I needed to confront her, but not yet. I wanted to gather more evidence, to make sure there was no way she could talk her way out of this. I needed to know exactly who Kevin was and just how far this had gone. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Claire came home around noon, acting as if everything was fine. She chatted about her errands, made lunch, and even asked how my day was going. I played along, forcing a smile and pretending everything was normal. But inside, I was seething. That evening, as she showered, I took another bold step. I checked her car. It felt invasive, wrong even. But at this point, I didn't care. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I had them. At first, I found nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual clutter of receipts, an empty water bottle, and an old sweater. But then, tucked under the passenger seat, I found something that stopped me cold. A small black jewelry box. The kind used for expensive gifts. My stomach churned as I opened it, revealing a gold bracelet engraved with the words, "For the one who stole my heart." I stared at it, my hands trembling with a mix of fury and heartbreak. This wasn't just an affair. Kevin wasn't just some fling. He was someone she cared about, someone she was emotionally invested in. And judging by the engraving, he felt the same way about her. I shoved the box back under the seat and went back inside, my mind racing. Claire was still in the shower, humming softly like she didn't have a care in the world. I couldn't believe her audacity, carrying on this affair so openly, so confidently, as if I were too stupid to notice. That night, as we sat in the living room watching TV, I couldn't stop staring at her. She laughed at the show, sipped her wine, and leaned back on the couch like she didn't have a secret in the world. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but I held back. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't just confront her. Not yet. If I was going to expose her lies, I needed to do it in a way she couldn't escape. I needed proof. Undeniable, irrefutable proof. And most importantly, I needed to catch her in the act. By the time I went to bed that night, I had made up my mind. I was going to follow her, watch her every move, and find out exactly what she was hiding. She thought she was clever, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. The decision to follow Claire was one I never imagined I'd have to make. But after everything I discovered, it felt like the only way forward. I needed to know the full truth, no matter how much it hurt. If she was going to lie to my face and insult my intelligence, then I was going to gather the evidence myself. The next morning, Claire was unusually cheerful. She hummed while making coffee, her phone never leaving her side. That alone was enough to raise my suspicions. She used to leave it lying around carelessly, but now she guarded it like it contained state secrets. I knew it was only a matter of time before she slipped up again. "I've got a busy day ahead," she said casually, taking a long sip of her coffee. "I'll be out most of the afternoon. Errands and lunch with Veronica." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Sounds good. Let me know if you need anything." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I will." By noon, she was out the door, dressed up again in a way that screamed she wasn't just running errands. Tight jeans, a low-cut top, and heels that made me wonder if she was really meeting Veronica at all. The second she pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my keys and followed. I kept a safe distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as I trailed her car through the streets. My heart raced as we drove through traffic, weaving between other cars. I half expected her to stop at a grocery store or a restaurant to meet Veronica, but instead, she pulled into the parking lot of a small boutique hotel on the other side of town. My stomach dropped. I parked across the street, My eyes locked on her as she got out of the car, glanced around, and headed inside. She wasn't even trying to hide it. There was no hesitation, no guilt in her movements. She walked through those doors like she belonged there, like she had done this before. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, torn between storming in after her and staying put. But I knew I had to be smart about this. If I confronted her now, she'd just deny everything, twist the narrative to make me look like the crazy one. No, I needed something concrete, something she couldn't talk her way out of. After about an hour, she emerged from the hotel. Her hair was slightly tousled, her face glowing with that same smug satisfaction I'd seen the morning after the party. And she wasn't alone. A man followed her out, tall, broad-shouldered, with a cocky grin plastered across his face. He looked younger than me, maybe by a few years, and he carried himself with an air of arrogance that made my blood boil. Claire laughed at something he said, her hand brushing his arm as they walked to her car together. I clenched the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. This was it. This was the proof I needed, staring me right in the face. They stood there talking for a moment, too far away for me to hear. But the intimacy between them was unmistakable. She leaned in close, whispering something in his ear, and he laughed, running a hand down her arm. I couldn't watch anymore. I snapped a few photos with my phone, my hands trembling as I captured the evidence. Then I drove away, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. They all swirled together, making it hard to think straight. When I got home, I sat in the car for a while, staring at the photos on my phone. There she was, smiling and carefree, standing next to a man who wasn't her husband. The reality of it hit me like a freight train. She wasn't just lying to me. She was living an entirely separate life, one that didn't include me. That evening, Claire came home like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day, and even suggested we watch a movie together. I played along, my stomach churning with every word she said. How could she look me in the eye and act so normal after what she'd done? As we sat on the couch, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it briefly before flipping it over, but not before I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. Kevin. Who's Kevin? I asked casually, keeping my tone neutral. Her eyes flicked to me, a brief flash of panic crossing her face before she quickly recovered. Oh, just someone from work. He's been helping with a project. Why? Just curious, I said, pretending to focus on the movie. But inside, my anger simmered. She was still lying, even when the truth was staring me right in the face. That night, as Claire slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake once again, my mind racing. The photos on my phone felt like a loaded weapon, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I used them. But how? Should I confront her directly, show her the evidence, and demand an explanation? Or should I wait, gather even more proof, and expose her in a way she'd never recover from? One thing was certain. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The weight of Claire's betrayal sat heavy on my chest as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him, that smug, cocky Kevin, and it felt like a knife twisting in my heart. The photos on my phone felt like a bomb waiting to go off, and I knew I had to be careful about how I used them. Confronting her outright was tempting, but Claire was a master manipulator. She'd twist the truth, cry, scream, maybe even turn it all back on me. I couldn't let her control the narrative this time. No, I needed a plan. A way to expose her lies in a way she couldn't deny or escape. The next morning, Claire was in a strangely good mood. She hummed to herself as she made breakfast, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Watching her act so carefree, so normal, made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. If she noticed anything off, she'd start getting suspicious. I'm meeting Veronica again later, she said casually as she poured herself coffee. We're planning her sister's birthday party. It might take a while, so don't wait up for dinner. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. All right, have fun. She smiled at me, completely oblivious to the fact that I was no longer the clueless husband she thought I was. I waited until she left before putting my plan into motion. Step one was gathering more evidence. The photos were damning, but I needed more. Texts, emails, anything that proved the depth of her betrayal. I started by checking our shared laptop, where Claire occasionally logged into her accounts. Sure enough, her email was still signed in. Most of it was boring and routine, but tucked away in a folder labeled Miscellaneous. I found a trail of messages between her and Kevin. The emails were just as incriminating as the texts I'd seen on her phone. Plans to meet at hotels, flirty banter, even discussions about their future. My stomach churned as I read them, but I forced myself to push through. The more evidence I had, the stronger my position would be when the time came to confront her. Step 2 was figuring out how to confront her without giving her the chance to lie or manipulate her way out of it. I decided I needed witnesses. People who could see the evidence for themselves and hold her accountable. Veronica seemed like the obvious choice given how close she was to Claire. But something about that felt wrong. Veronica had probably known about the affair all along, maybe even encouraged it. No, I needed someone else. Someone neutral. That's when it hit me, her mother. Claire had always been close to her mom, and despite their occasional disagreements, her mother had always been someone Claire respected. If I showed her mother the evidence, there was no way Claire could weasel her way out of it. That evening, Claire came home looking more radiant than ever. She kissed me on the cheek, asked how my day had been, and chatted about Veronica's party plans as if everything was fine. It was almost impressive how easily she could lie. "Sounds like a busy day," I said, keeping my tone light. "Did you get everything sorted out for the party?" "Almost," she said with a smile. "We've still got a few details to iron out, but it's coming together." I nodded, pretending to listen as she rambled on about decorations and catering. But in my mind, I was already planning my next move. Tomorrow I'd call her mother. Tomorrow I'd set the wheels in motion. That night, as Claire slept, I sat in the living room scrolling through the photos and emails one more time. Every piece of evidence was a dagger to the heart, but it also fueled my determination. She thought she could play me for a fool, but she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next morning, while Claire was out, I called her mother. Janet answered on the second ring, her voice warm and cheerful. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you?" I hesitated for a moment, unsure how to begin. "Hi, Janet. I need to talk to you about something. It's important." Her tone shifted instantly, the cheerfulness replaced with concern. "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "It's about Claire. I think you need to see something." Janet's mother sounded uneasy on the phone. "What's going on? You're scaring me," she said, her voice normally so warm and full of energy now carrying a note of hesitation. "It's not easy for me to say this," I began, my throat tightening with every word, "but I've found some things about Claire. Things you need to know. I can't explain it over the phone. Can we meet?" There was a long pause before she finally answered. "Of course. When and where?" We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe on the other side of town. As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Janet was one of the few people Claire couldn't manipulate with her charm and excuses. If anyone could see through her lies, it was her mother. Later that afternoon, I arrived at the cafe early, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline. I had organized all the evidence, the texts, emails, and photos, into a neat folder, ready to present to Janet. My palms were sweaty and my heart raced as I waited for her to arrive. When she finally walked in, her expression was a mixture of confusion and concern. "All right," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "What's this all about?" I hesitated, unsure of how to begin, but there was no point in sugarcoating it. "It's about Claire," I said quietly. "She's been lying to me, Janet. She's having an affair." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like she didn't believe me. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded and slid my phone across the table, showing her the folder I had compiled. "I have proof. Messages, photos, emails. It's all there." She hesitated before picking up the phone, her hands shaking slightly as she scrolled through the evidence. Her expression shifted from disbelief to shock to anger. By the time she set the phone down, her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't even know what to say," she muttered. "This doesn't sound like Claire. I don't understand." "Neither do I admitted, "but this is who she is now, and I don't know how to handle it anymore." Janet took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing with determination. "All right. Here's what we're going to do. She's coming over for dinner tonight. You'll come too, and we'll confront her together. She won't be able to lie her way out of this." The thought of facing Claire in front of her mother was nerve-wracking, but I agreed. This wasn't just about exposing her lies. It was about making sure she couldn't twist the story to make herself the victim. With Janet by my side, Claire would have no choice but to face the truth. That evening I arrived at Janet's house, my nerves stretched thin. Janet greeted me at the door, her expression grim. "She'll be here any minute," she said, ushering me inside. "Are you ready for this?" "Not really," I admitted, "but it has to happen." We didn't have to wait long. Claire arrived a few minutes later, her usual confidence radiating as she walked through the door. "Hey, Mom," she said brightly, giving Janet a quick hug before turning to me. "Oh, you're here too. What's going on?" Janet's expression didn't change. "Sit down, Claire. We need to talk." Claire hesitated, her smile faltering. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice suddenly cautious. "Just sit," Janet said firmly, pointing to the couch. Claire sat down, her eyes darting between us. "All right, seriously, what's going on? You're both acting weird." I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, opening the folder of evidence. "It's about this," I said, handing it to her. Claire's face went pale as she scrolled through the messages and photos. Her hands shook, and for the first time in years, she looked genuinely scared. "Where did you get this?" she stammered. "That doesn't matter," I said coldly. "What matters is that it's the truth. You've been lying to me, Claire. Sneaking around with him. I gave you every chance to come clean, but you didn't. So now we're doing this here, in front of your mother." Claire's eyes flicked to Janet, who was staring at her with a mix of disappointment and anger. "Is this true, Claire?" Janet demanded. "Have you been cheating on your husband?" For a moment, Claire looked like she might deny it. But then her expression hardened, and the smug, defiant look I'd come to dread returned. "So what if I have?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea how miserable I've been? He's suffocating, controlling. Kevin actually makes me feel alive." The words hit me like a slap to the face. "Suffocating?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "Controlling. All I've ever done is try to love you, Claire. And this is how you repay me?" Janet stood up, her voice rising. "I can't believe this, Claire. After everything he's done for you, after everything we've done for you, this is how you treat your husband." Claire's defiance faltered under her mother's glare, but she quickly regained her composure. "You don't understand," she said, her voice sharp. "This marriage has been dead for years. I just didn't have the courage to end it until now." "And sneaking around with another man was the answer?" I shot back, my voice breaking. "If you were so unhappy, why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you leave before it came to this?" Claire didn't respond. She just sat there staring at the floor, her jaw clenched. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something resembling regret in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. It was too late for regret. Janet turned to me, her expression softening. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly. "I had no idea things had gotten this bad." I nodded, barely able to speak. The weight of everything was pressing down on me, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. "I think I should go," I said finally, standing up. "There's nothing more to say here." Claire didn't try to stop me as I left, and neither did Janet. I walked out of that house, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was free. Free from Claire's lies, her manipulation, her betrayal. But I also felt lost. What was I supposed to do now? Where did I go from here? As I drove home, one thing was clear. This wasn't the end. Claire's betrayal had opened a wound that wouldn't heal easily, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever fully recover. But one way or another, I'd find a way to move forward, even if it meant doing it alone. The days that followed felt like a blur. After the confrontation at Janet's house, I barely spoke to Claire. Every word between us felt hollow, forced, as though we were two strangers occupying the same space. But the silence wasn't peace. It was the calm before the storm. I knew Claire, and I knew she wouldn't let things end so cleanly. She tried to act like nothing had changed, but her facade was cracking. She was careful not to bring up Kevin or what happened at her mother's house, but the tension between us was unbearable. Every glance she gave me was laced with irritation, every conversation cut short by her excuses to leave the room. It was clear she was angry, angry that I had exposed her, angry that I hadn't fallen for her usual tricks. But instead of apologizing or trying to fix things, she doubled down. One evening, a week after the confrontation, Claire walked into the living room where I was sitting. Her expression was cold and calculated. We need to talk, she said, crossing her arms. I braced myself. All right, I said, keeping my voice steady. What is it? She didn't sit down. Instead, she stood over me, her posture stiff, her eyes narrowing as she spoke. I've been thinking about everything, and I've made a decision. This marriage isn't working. It hasn't been for a long time. I felt the familiar sting of her words, but I didn't let it show. So you've decided now, after everything? That you're ready to admit that? I said, my voice laced with bitterness. After sneaking around behind my back? Claire shrugged, her indifference cutting deeper than her words. I didn't want it to happen this way, but maybe it's for the best. You deserve someone who matches your pace, and I deserve someone who makes me feel alive. The audacity of her words left me momentarily speechless. Matches my pace? I repeated, my voice rising. Do you even hear yourself, Claire? You've destroyed everything we built together, and now you're trying to paint this as some mutual failing? You don't get to justify this. Her eyes flashed with anger, but she kept her tone icy. I'm not trying to justify anything. I'm just telling you how I feel. This is over, and we both know it. I'll be staying with Veronica for a while until I figure things out. I stood up, unable to stay seated any longer. Figure things out? I said, my voice trembling with anger. Is that what you were doing at that hotel with Kevin? Figuring things out? Claire didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, a cold, cruel smile that sent a chill down my spine. Believe what you want, she said, but I'm done pretending this marriage works. I'm leaving. Something inside me snapped. Fine, I said, my voice low and steady. Leave. Go live your life with Kevin or whoever else you think makes you feel alive. But don't think for a second that you're walking away from this unscathed. Her smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? I reached for my phone, pulling up the folder of evidence I had compiled. This isn't just about you and me anymore, Claire. This is about the lies you've told, the people you've hurt, and the mess you've created. You think you can just walk away from this and start over? Think again. Her face went pale as I showed her the photos and messages. You wouldn't, she said, her voice shaking. You wouldn't ruin my life like that. I leaned in, meeting her gaze with a determination I hadn't felt in years. You've already ruined it, Claire. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. She stared at me for a long moment, her confidence crumbling under the weight of my words. Finally, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The next morning, Claire was gone. Her side of the closet was empty, her toiletries missing from the bathroom. She hadn't even left a note, just silence. For the first time in weeks, the house felt quiet. Truly quiet. Janet called later that day, her voice filled with concern. I heard Claire is staying with Veronica, she said. Are you all right? I didn't know how to answer. I don't know, I admitted, but I think this is for the best. Janet sighed. I'm sorry for everything. I wish I could have stopped her before it got this far. It's not your fault, I said. She made her choices, and now she has to live with them. The days turned into weeks, and slowly I began to rebuild. The house felt emptier without Claire, but it also felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. Claire might have thought she could walk away without consequences, but she was wrong. She left behind a trail of lies, and eventually it would catch up with her. As for me, I was finally free to start over, on my terms.